The Toronto Blue Jays have a big decision to make when it comes to their fifth starter spot. We know about Alek Manoah's struggles from last season, but he's still slightly proven, and he's still finished second in Cy Young voting, so that should play in his favor when making that decision for the Blue Jays front office. But Bowden Francis has been a name to watch this spring. He's been dominant. His stuff has looked really good. His velocity has been great, and he's really making a case to be the fifth starter come opening day. So we'll break that down and much more in this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. Now, Alek Manoah was supposed to start today for the Toronto Blue Jays, but his start got pushed back due to some shoulder tightness, and he didn't do himself any favors in terms of winning a roster spot when he went out that first time and plunked three batters. His command was all over the place, threw 17 strikes in the 38 pitches that he delivered to home plate. He didn't look good, but his velocity was there. You could see that his stuff is kind of getting back to where it used to be in terms of just effectiveness, but the command was just nowhere to be found, and I'm not sure if the Blue Jays trust him to open up the season as the fifth starter. But luckily for them, Bowden Francis has been a guy who has just been tearing it up this spring thus far. He was really good in some limited action last season with the Blue Jays, and he's really making a strong push for that fifth starter spot. And he's a bit of an older prospect as well, so that could work in his favor.
Yeah, I think he might be the guy who ends up getting it for opening day at the very least. A quick reminder, hit the subscribe button before we get into it. We're on the road to 12,000. But Peter, let's just get right into it. Bowden Francis yesterday pitched very, very well, and you mentioned it in the video about how you suspected, because by the time we were recording, he hadn't pitched yet, you were suspecting he was going to do very well, and he ultimately did. And John Morosi tweeted this today, and he said, Bowden Francis is one of the most important pitchers to watch in the Blue Jays camp. He has the ability to start and has performed well in an expanded role this spring, and that is especially relevant in the light of Alek Manoah and Yariel Rodriguez's respective injuries, missing mound time. And obviously, we don't expect either of these injuries to be severe in the sense of, taking them out of games, a ton of games going forward. But spring training is the time you really battle for that fifth starter spot, specifically regarding Manoah. And Peter, Bowden Francis has ran away so far, at least in my opinion, ran with the opportunity he's been given. He hasn't ran away with the fifth starter spot, but he's ran away with the opportunity he's been given. He was dominant yesterday. He was dominant in his time before. He was even dominant last season in the major leagues, albeit in a bit of a cleanup role there. But this guy, he has the stuff. He's miles per hour is up. He looks very, very good.
Yeah, he has looked very good, and this was a topic of conversation last spring training with Yusei Kikuchi and Mitch White, because Kikuchi struggled so much the year before that he had to make significant strides, and he had to show that he advanced as a pitcher in order to win that final starter spot, and ultimately he did. He ran away with the job, but I'm sure if he didn't, there would have been a long look by the Blue Jays, and it's a bit of a different circumstance because he makes $12 million and Alek Manoah is still making under $1 million, but he had to fight for that job, and even though he had a track record of being a starter in the major leagues, he was an all-star in the first half of the season with the Seattle Mariners. It didn't matter because he struggled so much the year before. So everything that you've done in years past kind of gets thrown under the rug because it doesn't really matter. It's a what have you done for me lately kind of league. And Alek Manoah lately hasn't been good. His command was awful all of last season. He could not find it at any single point. His strikeout stuff was not there. It looked like he had a dead arm. The velocity was down an entire mile an hour, which is a huge difference at the MLB level as well. So I think him struggling the way that he did in his first start and him not being able to stay on the mound right now doesn't do him any favors. But when it comes to Yariel Rodriguez, I don't think he was really ever in the conversation to be that fifth starter. I think they were trying to build him up because he didn't pitch all of last season apart from the World Baseball Classic. So you look at all those three guys, those three names, I guess you could throw Mitch White in there as well if you want to because his velocity is up and he looks a bit better this spring. But Bowden Francis has been the one that stood atop it, and he's alone at the top right now when it comes to those four names. And Alek Manoah, because he's still cheap, because his contract is still under team control for the next few years, they can afford to send him down, and he has options. And they can let him work on things in AAA until he is ready, but I think Bowden Francis is the guy right now, and he is going to be 28 years old come April 22nd. So it's not like he's some 20-year-old kid trying to make a name for himself. He's sort of established, and I think he's ready for it.
I think specifically for the opening day, which Peter is later this month. Who knows how it'll go throughout the whole season? I'm not saying personally that Bowden Francis is going to be the fifth starter throughout the whole year, but opening up the season, especially with the kind of setback that Alek Manoah had, I think it makes tons of sense. And Thomas Hall kind of agrees. He said Bowden Francis should be the front runner for the Jays opening a day number 5 starter spot if Alek Manoah isn't ready for opening day. There's still work to be done versus lefties, particularly his splitter development, but he deserves the opportunity to start, and I think so as well. I mean, unless Manoah comes back super healthy, ready to go, and dominates the rest of spring, I mean, what else could Francis possibly have done to earn that spot? Nothing is the question. You asked about yesterday's game in case any of you missed it. He looked nasty out there. Walkoff said Bowden Francis has been undeniably nasty this afternoon, which was yesterday, and he is unbelievable. Hit 96 with his fastball, which is a much higher than we seen. Not much higher, but it's like a couple ticks higher than we've seen in the past. And we've seen his curveball, obviously, through a play last year. I'm all in. When you look at his stats, Peter, he's been very good. Obviously, we just kind of narrowed it down to the major leagues here. But in he played 20 games last year. He's just a very, very solid player that I'm looking forward to. I mean, he deserves at least a chance. See what he can do with it for the first run, 1 or 2, while Manoah gets some work down in the minors. Because let's be real here, Manoah could use more work in the minors no matter how long he waits or not.
And I don't think this is a bad thing for the Blue Jays. Obviously, you wanted Alek Manoah to come in and light the world on fire and show that he's ready for the 5th starter spot. But because you have a Bowden Francis in the minor leagues, you're able to give him more time, and you don't have to rush him back up to the big leagues. And if you pop up those numbers again, Nick, he had a 1.73 ERA last year in 36 innings of work. His whip was at .826, which is a phenomenal number, something that you probably won't see over the course of a 162 game season. But in that small sample size, he was very solid, and he gave the Blue Jays some good innings. The question that I have is, will he be able to sustain this kind of stuff over the course of a 5-6 inning start? That's the big question for Bowden Francis. He was mostly a reliever last year, opened a couple of times. He was a bulk reliever at times as well, but he never was tasked with going 5-6 innings. And that's going to be a big question mark because you want your starter to ultimately be able to go deeper in games and then turn it over to the back end of the bullpen, considering the way that the Blue Jays play. So that's the big question mark for Bowden Francis. And he's not a reliever. He is a starter. He wants to be a starter. He has eclipsed over 142 innings of work when he was with the Milwaukee Brewers in their minor league system. So he has been battle tested in that sense. He has had a lot of innings under his belt, and he's able to sustain that over the course of a season. But he's kind of a late bloomer. We didn't see those kinds of numbers when he was with the Milwaukee Brewers. He's really honed into his craft now, and he looks good. He looks ready for the major league level, and I think he's going to make a big impact this year, and it allows Alek Manoah to find himself in the minor leagues, and I think that's best for the Blue Jays right now.
Yeah, and we've seen that they've been building him up for, I mean, really the past 2 years, but especially this spring, we've seen him start games, or at least go long into games, or really, I mean, I think deep down they probably planned for, as a backup plan in case Manoah, whether he didn't perform well in spring or whether he got, I mean, injured. No one really suspected the injury. We don't think the injury is going to be severe, but we've kind of been mentioning, like I said earlier, the spring training thing. You need to be able to throw, especially when you're battling for a spot, good innings, especially against weaker hitters, and Manoah hasn't done that. The one start he has thrown was really bad. Not to say that the one start is indicative of what he's going to be going forward, but I mean, if Bowden Francis is going out there and mowing down every single hitter, the Jays want to give themselves their best chance to win on opening day, which is March 30th or somewhere around there. And if they don't, then obviously if you're just throwing Manoah out there just because of the optics of it, it's not going to look very good if he goes out and blows up once again.
Yeah, well, I thought Manoah would be the clear front runner to get the 5th starter spot just because of that pedigree that he has and the success that he has had at the big league level over the course of a full season. But he couldn't afford to have any setbacks, and this is a setback right now. And him being out, not throwing, I think gives the clear advantage to Bowden Francis because he's healthy and he looks good, and he's made an impact at the big league level before. It's not like he's an unproven guy who has never pitched at the big league level. He's someone that's ready to go, and he showed that last year. He was very vocal about wanting to be a starter coming into the season, and I think he's got the stuff to do it. The big question mark I have is, will he be able to be consistent? Will he have it from start to start? Will he have it from inning to inning? And that's going to be a big question that hopefully we get the answer to from Bowden Francis in the near future here. But I'm really looking forward to this. I think it's going to be a big time battle from now until the end of spring, and it sucks for Alek Manoah because we wanted to see him bounce back, and we wanted him to be that guy, and maybe not even be the fifth starter by the end of the season. Maybe move his way on up and become that front of the line guy that we're accustomed to. But right now, it seems like that's not going to be the case, at least for the start of the season. And Bowden Francis is more than ready to step in and make that impact.
Yeah, there's still around 20 days or 25 days until opening day, so there is still some time for Alek Manoah to maybe bounce back, but for now, it's going to be a fun battle to keep an eye on, and one that I didn't suspect was going to be this close even a couple weeks ago. But that'll wrap it up. If you want to check out our video from yesterday, click on your screen now and let us know in the comments who you would rather have as the opening day number 5 starter. So I guess not opening day, but the first number 5 starter on the first run-through round. We'll see you more.